Maimane sends Hellen Zille to the political sin bin, but she stays on as premier and queries his reading of the DA's constitution. Speaking of staying, so is President Jacob Zuma. And the stench of state capture allegations is going nowhere in the wake of Gupta leaks. I'm Thulasizwe Simelani. The PolitBureau is now in session. We invite you to send us your video comments via the WhatsApp number 082-884-6370, or you can chat to us on Twitter at eNCA. Today, Huffington Post South Africa editor-at-large Ferial Hafaji and University of Johannesburg Professor of Politics Mngambi Ndletyana. Months after her controversial tweets suggesting there were good aspects to colonialism, on Saturday, Maimane announced Hellen Zille's suspension from the party. Hours later, the DA said she wasn't suspended yet.
Our federal executive has resolved that Ms. Zille be suspended from all party-related activities until such a time that the disciplinary hearing is concluded. We've also asked that the disciplinary hearing be expedited. It was a matter of urgency for the people of this country.
I read Maimani's statement online and then realized that he thought the suspension was of immediate effect. I immediately then went to the DA's constitution, clause 3.6.3, which shows that that position is unconstitutional.
Prof. Ndletyana, let me start with you. So if the DA was trying to counter the public perception that they've failed to act on Hellen Zille, it hasn't really worked, has it, in the wake of what has happened with this suspension, non-suspension?
Well, they are doing something. I think there's eagerness to get rid of her. She's not doing good for the party. This is a terrible thing for Mmusi, because Mmusi has to show that he's in charge. And Helen is quite determined to show as well that she's perhaps in charge of Mmusi, that she was once a leader of the DA and therefore she cannot be treated in any other way. It's a terrible thing of a leader allowing her ego to cloud her judgment. I would have thought that she was a lot more strategic than, for instance, Tony Leon. After stepping down, he simply withdrew, but she's refused to withdraw, which is not good for Mmusi, and it's tearing the party apart, unfortunately.
Ferial, I'm sure the DA will have good reasons why the version of events that has been given by Hellen Zille and also James Self, the letter that he sent to Helen, have prevailed. But out there in the public, perception among some is that this is simply a case of Mmusi being managed by those who are really in charge of the DA. Is that fair?
I wonder, it looked like a lot of gofefeing yesterday, to coin Trump's phrase. The DA usually gets things right to the letter of the law. So it did look like Hellen Zille had a point. She had been given until June the 6th to respond. But obviously, Maimane knows what he's facing in 2019. They have a very strategic plan to get there. The tweets about colonialism maybe being a cool thing, it really, really hurt those 2019 ambitions. But Hellen Zille is being Hellen Zille. Her book title is Not Without a Fight. And she certainly is not going without a fight here. Not at all.
So speaking of leaders not vacating office and not going down without a fight, that's exactly what President Jacob Zuma is doing. And that's despite his opponents in the ANC's National Executive Committee trying to oust him for the second time in 7 months.
The NEC sought to have a detailed analysis of the consequences of removing its sitting president, appreciating that some calls, especially those made by the opposition, are not so much about removing the president, but rather dislodging the ANC itself from power.
Ferial, what do you make of that? He talks to the issue of a sitting president, but also talks about that it's more than just about one individual. It's about dislodging the ANC from power.
Yes. Very interesting piece by Shanti Abubakar in last week's City Press, which I thought got overshadowed by other things, where that's very much become the accepted narrative of the ANC after a meeting with various Southern African ruling parties who believe that NGOs, civil societies are being fed, are being coached, are being funded by outside Western interests to get rid of governing parties. Mr. Mantashe, as he always has done, looks like he's bought straight into that. And you can see that I think it offers an easy narrative outside the very, very serious of state capture allegations and now proof, thanks to the emails which we've seen this week.
Prof, this argument that it's not just about one person, it's about dislodging the entirety of the ANC, surely has some degree of merit. I mean, the opposition parties have said that it's not just about Jacob Zuma, it's about the whole ANC. Why should the ANC help them?
Well, opposition parties obviously wants the ANC out. Any other opposition party would prefer that. But for that argument to come from the ANC is just a boogeyman. They are trying to excuse their own inability to rein in their president. So instead of taking up responsibility and accounting for their own weaknesses, they're saying, no, we can't do this, because if we do this, then we'll be helping opposition parties. So it's a red herring. The point is, they are completely incapable of reining in President Zuma, because some of them are guilty of the same things that President Zuma is guilty of. It's all about self-preservation for most of them. So it's self-interest over the interest of the party.
How does the DA play this one out? I mean, already the factions and the ructions inside the ANC are playing themselves out. Did you see the speech by Blade Nzimande at the COSATU Central Committee? How does the DA and other opposition parties, how do they play this one?
Well, it looks like the DA quickly wants Premier Hellen Zille to step aside so that it can make absolute mincemeat out of this moment and challenge that the ANC finds itself in. She's simply not playing ball. But I do think the so-called hashtag Gupta leaks and the email trove is an absolute treasure chest for the opposition parties, because suddenly I think the anatomy of state capture is laid bare for all of us to see. Before, it was all in the realm of investigative journalism. There was often proof, but this really puts it very, very clearly for us in hundreds of thousands of emails that are looks like going to come out every single day from now until the conference in 2017. That's the ANC conference.
Are they capable of seizing the moment, Prof, the opposition parties?
Opposition parties, yes, they are. I mean, they don't even have to do anything. The ANC is self-decaying. These leaks are simply damaging the ANC, also showing the extent to which their party as a whole is implicated in this thing.
In fact, I was going to talk about that whole situation with the ANC Youth League, which used to be a potent force in the ANC.
Well, it used to be a potent force, but for wrong things. Potent, yes, but for wrong things. Since 1994 or so. So these leaks are validating the fact that Zuma is not the only problem, but the entire party, because it's implicating other individuals. So for the ANC, you can't simply say get rid of Zuma, therefore the party is fine. So the opposition party, to answer your question directly, they don't need to do anything. All they need is simply to distribute all the information that's coming out. The ANC is doing a good job of destroying itself.
Right. I've got something interesting I want to show you. So having survived last weekend's political tremor, the president seemed to be back to his usual self. By Wednesday, he was the picture of confidence, delivering his budget vote to Parliament. Take a look at how he greeted DA leader Maimane at the start of his speech and how he mocked the opposition at the end of it.
I thank you. Thank you.
What do you make of his demeanor, Ferial? Does he look like a man worried?
I think our president's always been a lovely person. I mean, even with a media body that hasn't always been kind to him, I think he's really had a narrative of discontent and a presidency of scandals. He is always incredibly polite. And I think that was just classically President Zuma at Parliament. I think all other times when you catch him off camera, when you notice him in the parliamentary seats listening, I see a far more worried leader there, and somebody who, if you look at all the other happenings at the National House of Traditional Leaders this week, is very much working quietly and assiduously, maybe not so quietly, to ensure that December 2017 turns out exactly how he needs it to turn out.
Prof, looking at the confidence that he exuded in that performance, I mean, remember the last time he saw Maimane, they were arguing about it's a funny democracy, you are supposed to be a Democrat, etc. Yeah. Do you think it's based on his reading of what is called the balance of forces in the ANC and how safe he is there, and also how important is the outcome then in December 2017 for him to continue in the position of president?
Well, generally, politicians are very good at disguising their own feelings. And Jacob Zuma is quite an actor. So this is part of that, especially because he thinks that people expect him to look weak and defeated. So he's there to show that he's still in charge. Well, partly because he was encouraged by the NEC outcome. Whether he thinks he will win, I think that's another matter altogether. Do I think he will win? I don't know, but he might win. I mean, ANC processes are manipulated. All sorts of things happen. Yeah.
Let's hold it there. Thank you very much, Prof. We'll continue with the discussion after the break. We dive deeper into the whirlpool of the Gupta Leaks scandal.